We're at the end of Siman Shin Chaf Hey. We're in the middle of talking about being mafresh challah shleim and non-mukaf, and just to catch up to where we are, today we're going to sort of be off topic, but in that question is, can't be mafresh challah shleim and non-mukaf. If I'm here and I'm not next to the thing that I'm turning into challah. So we saw 2 times ago that basically the way we put dough into factories to do Hafrashas challah remotely, I'm not talking about a little bakery in a remote, like in the factory, according to the Gra, that's shleim min mukaf. Maybe according to some, it's possible to make it min mukaf, but Pasha says that it's not going to be min mukaf, even no matter how hard we try. For sure, according to the Gra, and even according to others, it's pretty hard to actually make it min mukaf. So our question then was, okay, so why are we doing that? We're clearly not allowed to do that. Okay, so last time we said, well, maybe the reason why you're allowed to do that is because we're talking about Chalas Chutzaretz, and the Chalas Chutzaretz, the din is you're allowed to do shleim min mukaf. So hey, that would seem, on the surface, to be an easy answer, but we quickly explained and realized that doesn't make sense, because that din that in Chalas Chutzaretz you're allowed to do shleim min mukaf is only if you're doing it from batter on itself. If you're doing it from one batter on another batter, then even the Chalas Chutzaretz has to be shleim min mukaf. Has to be min mukaf on l'chatchila. Correct. So the question is, so we're back to our question, which is, do we have any justification for being mafresh challah, basically shleim min mukaf? Okay. So what we're talking about today is that is it possible that in fact we're doing something that's not correct? L'chatchila now we're doing mafresh shleim min mukaf. But maybe it's kedai for me to be over on the Isser. I should say for David to be over on the Isser. I'll be mafresh shleim min mukaf. Maybe that's kedai. It's kedai to do that because all these other people are now going to eat food that's not tevel. So he's saving all these people from eating food that's not tevel. So maybe it's kedai for him to do that thing that's not l'chatchila, that Isser that he's doing, which is not, you're not supposed to do that. It works. It creates. It works as a Hafrashas challah. But is it okay for him to do that in order to help all those people who are out there? Okay, we're going to talk about that possibility.
I got rid of the patience.
Okay, so we're going to get to that idea. Maybe we should. So what comes to mind, which is what we're going to talk about, is the Gemaros says in Shabbos. I'm going to talk to you about the case in a second. The Gemaros says, the Gemara says, you don't do that. You don't tell one person to do a little avera to save someone else from a really big avera. So even though we might be saving lots of people from eating things that are tevel, what are we doing? We should ask David to do even a little thing, to do something that's not l'chatchila in order to save those people.
It's not an Isser. We agree there's absolutely no question it's not an Isser.
What do you mean it's not Isser?
It's not doing an Isser.
Well, you know, I'll be mafresh challah shleim min mukaf.
He's not doing something like He's doing a b'diah.
So what is that as an example?
That's like
When he had the koyach, min mukaf, and he didn't.
Right.
It's not beyond it.
It's not beyond it.
in that case, we're going to talk about that case in a second. It's not the other to do it either. That's why he's doing shleim min mukaf. If he could have done it in a mukaf, what is he doing?
He should have done it.
Okay, we're going to talk about. I'm going to talk about the case in a second. But the Shayla trying to say, okay, now I have to tell you before we talk about that topic, you have to realize that this whole thing that I'm going to talk to you about is totally in something we talked about way long ago in Shin Chaf Gimel, which was it can sein that in Chalas Chutzaretz there is no Isser to eat food that didn't have the Hafrashah. It could be it's only a mitzvah on the person doing the Hafrashah. Now, if that's true, if it's true that in Chalas Chutzaretz the whole mitzvah is do Hafrashah, but there's zero Isser tevel on the thing itself, then David is doing Isser, and he's not saving anybody. He's not Shiyasir Chaver, because there's nobody being saved, because if they eat tevel, they wouldn't be any worse off. So, to eat tevel?
He's over Isser.
Of course, well, he's doing something wrong. What is it?
He's not a kind of l'chatchila.
Score what you want to. He's doing something he's not supposed to. He's doing it. You don't call it. What? Yeah, we're going to say in a second.
Look at the example. That's a
Yeah, we talk about
Says the words, says those words.
It's a game. I don't know. What does it mean? It's a game. Losing on l'chatchila means he's not doing what he's supposed to do. Okay, so what I'm saying now is that if there's no Isser at all to eat tevel, then he's helping nobody. Okay, that actually in a way would maybe make it a little bit different, because maybe then we would say is the whole mitzvah is to do the Hafrashah. We who are given the hashgacha have taken over the owner's responsibility to do that mitzvah, so he's not doing it for other people, he's doing it for himself. he has this mitzvah to do Hafrashah. We've taken on that responsibility, and that he's doing it to save himself. Maybe that's a little bit better.
But really, what should be the owner's Isser? The owner's. Right?
Isser to be Hafrashah?
This is the owner's chiv. The owner's chiv. They're not from Challah, so he's doing Shulchan. It's his Isser.
He's not doing non-mukaf.
I know, but it's his responsibility.
He's contracted with us to inform.
But it's his responsibility. It's owner's responsibility. You go to okay, go owner, go do non-mukaf.
So the owner doesn't care. I mean, the owner.
He hired us to do it. Where's it?
I understand, but it's his responsibility.
Not anymore. Once he signed the contract, it's up to you. He gave it up.
No, well, he arranged to do minute.
He gave it up because we don't trust him.
Fine. The bottom line is we
I didn't resign the owner.
No, really, he gave it up because he never does anything. He's a chaser. He doesn't care anything. He's what he thinks.
Signing the contract with our Shulchan agency, that means he's contracted others to do it on his behalf.
Well, let's say, and therefore,
So there's no, you cannot kind of the owner.
Well, that's it. You can't. So, I'm not asking you to put business in the mezuzah, and I don't do a good job. Who gets that very?
You do.
No, I don't. No, I don't. Who gets? Who's already the mezuzah? Who's already the mezuzah?
okay.
It's to live in the
Okay, so the Rishonim.
Where's the mitzvah? Like in the mitzvah. Whatever you want. Like in the mitzvah. Yeah, you're right. There's no kisser. Like in the mitzvah is the owner.
Okay, so what it is that what I'm going to show to you is one Gemara that says what I just said to you, the statement I said to you beforehand, that you shouldn't do in a very to help somebody else, and then there's a whole slew of other Gemaras that say that you should. Okay, and that's what we're trying to talk about that Challah. We're gonna focus on Tosfos' way of looking at it because that's how the later place can talk about it in the framework of Tosfos. There are other Turtzim also. So there's one Gemara that says you shouldn't do it, and there's a whole pile of Gemaras that say no. We'll go through some. Okay, so the one that says you shouldn't is a Gemara on Shabbos. As I said, Gemara on Shabbos. It says like this: there's Isser Midrabanan to do something called R'diyas Hapas. R'diyas Hapas means when you bake. When they used to bake bread, they would slap the bread onto the side of the wall. They used to do it across the street. They went to go take pictures of it. They used to do it across the street. They had this big oven, and you stuck the food in front of the top. The fire is burning on the bottom. Then you stick the stuff onto the sides. The bread would stick onto the sides, and then there's a big chachma to get it off, because if you don't get it off right, it falls right down to the bottom. Okay, and you have to.
It's not a Wednesday. I'm not how to take it.
And there's also a whole skill to getting it off. I'm not sure if they're doing exactly, if they were doing across the street exactly what was in times of the Gemara. But so yeah. So that's called R'diyas Hapas. It's also a job to do that. Okay. So what happened? The Gemara is talking about is a person b'shoigig put dough into the oven on Shabbos. So if you leave the bread in there for another 10 minutes, he's going to be Mechal Shabbos. He'll have done the Isser, the Malacha of Oifa. Okay, so he'll have baked on Shabbos. So you come along and you want to do R'diyas Hapas. You want to pull this thing off before it bakes. Okay, so the person wants to pull it off before it bakes, and he's going to therefore save the other person from doing the Isser D'Oraisa. He's doing Isser D'Rabbanan of R'diyas Hapas. That's the lesser Isser. And the Gemara says, no, of course you shouldn't do that. He says, why should I do a little Isser to save the person from the bigger? So that's the Gemara uses this term, בשביל שיזכה חבירו. No, you shouldn't do it. Okay, so that's the one Gemara that says you should not do a small Isser to save somebody else. Okay. But in contrast to that, I'm going to tell you a couple of examples where the Gemara says that you should do it. Okay, and one is, this is not a perfect example, that Gemara itself. The end of that Gemara says, the Gemara is trying to explain a case, so the end of the Gemara says is, that what happens if the guy himself put the bread into the oven, and then he has charat on it, he put it in the case now, he did it b'mezid, he has charat that he did this, so he wants to be able to Isser D'Rabbanan of R'diyas Hapas to save himself from being B'chal Shabbos. Because if he gets it up before it bakes, he won't have been B'chal Shabbos. And the Gemara says, 100% you should do that. Okay? The Gemara says, for sure you do. The Gemara says, afterwards, the Gemara totally not bothered that he's doing a little Isser to save him from a bigger Isser. That's like Pasha to the Gemara. He should pull it off to save himself from the Isser D'Oraisa. Okay? That's not a great case, because that's not for somebody else, but it's going to be important to us. Okay. The next case is, the Gemara says in Eruvin. What?
Don't do it.
Okay. So the right. Okay. So the next Gemara is Gemara in Eruvin. The Gemara says is a chaver gave an Aruch some figs. Okay, and in a way he didn't realize that he had given it to him without being mafresh shumas amashis. And the Gemara says is that the chaver, and now what's going to go on is the Aruch thinks that the chaver, of course, was mafresh shumas amashis. He assumes that it was. He's going to eat it without being mafresh himself, and therefore the Gemara says is the chaver should be mafresh non-mukaf in order to save the Amoritz from eating the tevel. Okay, now it happens to be everyone quotes that that's what the Gemara says, which is true. The Gemara does say that. It's just worth keeping in mind. The Gemara says that in the Gemara that's Rebbe. Okay, Rishonim and Gamliel says not like that. Rishonim says he's not allowed to do that. Okay, but most the Rishonim assume that we pass on like Rebbe that you are allowed to do. Okay, and it happens to be some machlokes nekim. Okay, next cases.
Right. So someone has to kasha?
Yeah, I'm going to tell you, all the Rishonim ask these kashas.
All
these kashas, all these things, Gemaras I'm telling you, are kashas that the Rishonim ask. That all these Gemaras are a steer to that Gemara on Shabbos. Okay, next is the Gemara in Gittin has that I count 3 different cases where the Gemara says you should free your Eb Kanani, okay, which is an Isser, actually, it's an Isser L'chayra. Not everybody agrees with it, but many say that it's an Isser D'Oraisa of L'olam and Tavodim. So, and you should free your Eb Kanani in 3 cases. 3 cases that I saw, they're right around the same place. One is if you have a Chatzi Eved, Chatzi Ben Chayrin, so the Eved can't get married. He won't be able to kind of mitzvah puravu because he can't get married because he's of this half and half. So the Gemara says you should free him. You should be over the Isser in order to help the guy. I'm sorry, the Gemara didn't say it. You should free him in order that he should be able to do the mitzvah. The Gemara says also if you have a chatzi shifcha of a chatzi bas charin, she's a shifcha, but she doesn't have mitzvah puravu, but because of her people being bezana, so the Gemara says you should free her also. And also the Gemara says if you have an Eved Kanani and you need a minion, so by freeing him, you have another yid who's kosher for a minion, who counts towards a minion, whereas you should free him also. Okay? So now it happens to be that there are some who get away from these questions through things that have nothing to do with us. Okay, for example, there's a bunch of Achronim who talk about maybe there's no Isser of L'olam Mem Tavoidu on the Chatzi Eved and the Chatzi Ben Chayrin. Okay, it could be that Isser doesn't apply to Chatzi Eved and Chatzi Ben Chayrin. So that has nothing to do with our din. They're saying there's no Isser. You're not doing an Isser to free. The one doesn't say you're being over an Isser. The one says you should free him in order that he should be able to get married. So some people say there's no Isser. Some people say that these things don't apply if you do it for yourself, like it's freeing the person to say you should have a minion, you're gaining something from it. So there's some answers that have nothing to do with us. Okay, but many will ask the question from these Gemaras. And the last is, the Gemara, this is the Gemara in Pesachim, says that things like this. There are people who have been mitahir themselves. In the case we're talking about a Zov or a Mitzvah, they've been mitahir themselves. But even if they were mitahir themselves, they still can't eat from the carbon Pesach until they bring a carbon. It's called the Mechusa Kippur. So what happened is, the person, in a Mitzvah, let's say, a Mitzvah was mitahir himself, and he's all ready to go, and he realizes that Erev Pesach, after they brought the carbon Tamid Shabbat Arbayim, he realized that he didn't bring his carbon Mitzvah. So he can't eat from the carbon Pesach. So now there's an Isser to bring the carbon now, because you already brought the Tamid Shabbat Arbayim. Once you bring the carbon Shabbat Arbayim, you now bring any carbonis afterwards, called the Isser of Hashlama. Okay? Allah Hashlam call it carbonis kulam. You can't make any carbonis afterwards. So he realized that he needs his carbon Mitzvah. And if he doesn't bring it, he's going to miss out on eating the Korban Pesach that night. So the Gemara says this, the Kohen should be over on the Isser of Hashlama. He should bring the carbon Mitzvah after the Tamid Shabbat Arbayim was brought, in order to help this guy eat the Korban Pesach tonight. Okay, so here's the Kohen is being over an Isser to help this person. The Kohen is doing it, he's shachting, he's doing all the avoidance for this carbon, in order to help somebody eat a carbon tonight. He's helping somebody else, not for him. He's not going to eat the carbon. Okay, so there are other cases. Also, there's a bunch of cases where the din is you are supposed to do an issur to help somebody else, and here the Gemara Shabbos says that you're not supposed to. Okay, so we're gonna stick with the way Tosfos talks about this kasha. Tosfos there in Shabbos has 3 answers to the question. Okay, there are other Rishonim with other answers, which we're sort of going to ignore, as I said to you, because you'll see the poskim later are going to talk about these 3 answers. They're going to roughly work around these answers. Okay? So the first answer is like this. First place just has the kasha from Shabbos to Eruvin. Okay? In Shabbos it said you could you don't do this apas, and Eruvin it says you can be mafresh in a mukaf. Tosfos says no. The reason, really, you're never allowed to do an aver for somebody else. But in the case in Eruvin, you got the person into the mess. You're the one who gave him the figs. The Chavru gave him the figs, and he got the person to be a bear. Well, if you got him into the mess, you have to get him out of the mess also. And the fact that you can be a Nisr, it's your problem. You messed up by giving him the thing that you weren't supposed to. So Be'etzem, you're not allowed to do it for anybody. But the Gemara says, the Gemara says like Pasha, you can't do it a bear for somebody else. But in this case, you got the guy into the mess. You gave him the figs in the first place, so you got him into the mess. You have to get him out of the mess, even though that's going to cost you something. It's going to cost you. You're going to be over the sister. Too bad on you. You got him into the mess. Okay? Does that make sense? Well, no. He's going to have an issur, a bigger issur. He's going to eat tevel. So usually you'd say is, if he eats tevel, it's his problem. He's eating tevel.
Normally we don't say because you're going to get punished, and therefore, not enough for you to get punished after Yom Cheshbon. Over here, if he's going to do, you're going to self yourself get punished.
That's not how Taisa says it. There are people who talk about it like that, not in this part. Taisa doesn't talk about it like it's if I'm saving myself. That's how Taisa says it. It's that if I can't say is let him suffer. If he does the wrong thing, it's his problem. It's not his problem. It's my problem that he's doing the wrong thing. Why is he eating tevel? Because I made him eat it. So,
what's he got a problem if I have to do this?
Well, you caused the problem, so you have a responsibility. That what?
You're saving yourself.
That you're saving yourself because you're going to make the... Because you got this person to eat tevel. I hear a logic to it. You can take your way. I'm not convinced. You should know. I wasn't going to tell you this, but there's a Sharatzian who asks, in a case that we're not going to talk about, he says, I don't understand. He says, what's this whole Shiloh? He says, what's the Shiloh? He says, so if he does this, so I do this, it's all the same thing. Okay, the Sharatzian gets the question. I'm totally baffled by the question. I'm actually baffled. He says, maybe you can give an answer. I'm very surprised by the question. Because to the point that there's some Achronim, not the Sharatzian, other Achronim who says, you know what, so maybe for men they can do this for somebody else, but ladies don't have armor, so they can't do it for somebody else. Okay, so what's strange is, because the Gemara says, even though Kol Yisrael Rebim Zeh B'Zeh, my responsibility is not as great as the person who does the Avera. I have arvus to this person, so I have a responsibility that's less than that person's is. So when he's going to do an Avera, a big Avera, my share of that is not equal to what he did. My share of that is much less than that. So
it sounds like it's mutter for yourself. It sounds like it's mutter for yourself to do this, but somebody else is awesome.
But would you
why somebody else is awesome? Why, if the Torah is matter you to save yourself in this, so it's all the same. Why shouldn't another Jew help save this guy from this? Right?
So let's say I was going to do a small isser. They say do a big isser to save yourself from the small isser. Would that make sense? No,
if I myself can do it to save myself from an isser, why can't somebody else do it for me? The Torah,
because you mean I'm not doing not Arvis als that I'm responsible, but Arvis als that's how the Sharatzian says it. You're saying the Arvis is that I should care for him, I should be able to do. We should all be like one person.
If it's mutter for the guy to save himself, why isn't it mutter for another Jew to save the other Jew?
So you think since we all have a collective cheshbon, but my private cheshbon, I'm off the hook.
Yeah, but why should the Torah be matter? The Torah doesn't care who does that Avera. If Torah says that you can do an Isser to save yourself from an Avera, why do they matter roommate to take Shimon from an Avera? What's the difference in Torah? Who does that Avera?
You think that depends? What you just said depends on Arvis? You think that a lady wouldn't have that same swar? What you said, which is, why do we care who does the Isser? If the net of the Isurim, we should care about that. Okay, so he says that from the Arvis. So I'm not going to talk about even that ladies should be excused. Because ladies don't have arvus, which is like a very technical. Okay, so from the technicality of that, I don't have the same responsibility as the person himself. Okay, and I was going to fine. So this is Taisa's first teretz. Now Taisa's a little later, seemingly going back in this teretz says Kenzain that if it's a mitzvah, what's his words? It's a mitzvah derabim or a mitzvah gedolah Kenzain. Even this first answer would be matter. Even though this first answer that you can never do it, you can only do it to save yourself. He talks about it for Puruvu, which is a mitzvah gedolah, I think it's the word he uses. It's a tremendous mitzvah. Maybe Kenzain, even this first answer would hold it. Okay, but the first answer basically says is you can never do something for somebody else except if you got them into the mess. Okay. Second answer Taisus. He brings some Riva. Okay, he says basically the opposite. Okay, basically he says exactly the opposite of his first teretz. The first teretz was you can never do it except if you got it to the mess. And the second teretz of Taisus says both. Later, the second and third teretz are both the opposite of the first teretz. The second teretz says you can always do it. It's always mutter to save the other person. If you're doing a small avera to save a big person, you can always do it. Except in the case of R'diyas Hapas, there the person already did the Maisa Isser. The Maisa Isser is to stick bread onto the oven. Now it takes 15 minutes until it bakes, so you could save the Isser from actually coming to fruition. But the Maisa Isser is to stick the bread onto the wall of the oven. So the Maisa Isser the person did, that's the Avera. The Avera is to stick it onto the wall. There's a technicality. That if it doesn't cook, then technically he wasn't over the Isser. But sort of like, from the Marita and the Rebbe for doing the wrong thing, he did the thing ready. He stuck the bread onto the side of it. He said, so in that case, forget it, leave the guy alone. He did the Avera too bad on him. The Russian's going to come after him for doing what he did, which is sticking bread into an oven on Shabbos. Saving him from the end saves him from the technicality of it, but you're not gaining anything. But if you're really saving the person from this that didn't happen yet, like the person in the case of in Eruvin, the person didn't yet eat the tevel, so you could save him from doing this, or then you should do it. Okay? Tosfos even says that if the person already did the ma'izisa, maybe he couldn't even save himself. Okay, I'm not sure how that fits with the end of the Gemara. Okay, the end of the Gemara says you could do it for yourself. But okay, now the third answer is very similar to the second answer, similar to the shrifa. The third answer is you can always help somebody else. You can always do a small issue to save somebody else, except if the other person was pasher. If the other person, the second case is the person had to do the ma'aseh issue. The third case is if the person was pasher, if he got himself into the mess, then you can't save him. But if he wasn't pasher, then you could save the person basically no matter what. Okay? So he says, so therefore, let's say the person's eating, the person who I gave the figs to, he obviously wasn't pasher. I gave him the figs. He's happy-go-lucky, thinks that he got it from a chaver, he's allowed to eat it. Or the case of the eved, those cases also is not a pasher. Okay, the case that's the hardest to understand is the case of the mechusik kippurim. Okay, Tosfos specifically says that in the case of mechusik kippurim, the person is also not a pasher. It's a little funny because in the case of mechusik kippurim, the person sort of was pasher. Why didn't he bring his carbon in the morning? Why did he wait till the afternoon? So Misami means it's because he didn't do anything to make himself be pasher. He would, through his inaction, the carbon wasn't brought. He didn't do anything. What? He was totally busy burning his carbon. Okay, maybe that's me. Tosfos doesn't explain why, but he specifically says in that case that's also considered not a pasher. Okay, so before we're going to get to find out from the poskim, hopefully, which of these shorts they think is the right, so to speak, the right teretz. Let's just go back to our case of Hafrashas Challah. Okay? Let's go back to our case of Hafrashas Challah, Shleim and non-mukaf, the way we do it on a commercial level. Okay, so at first glance, a person could have thought that according to let's go through Shulchan and Tosfos. According to the first teretz of Tosfos is if you get the person into the mess, then you can do the aver to help them. That was the first teretz of Tosfos. So he says, well, when David did the initial inspection, he said, yes, you could be a kosher company. So he told them, yeah, you could put our hashgacha symbol on the package. So now all those people are out there eating those food because we said they could. So now we have to save them. We got them into the mess. So therefore we have to save them. Okay? So of course, that's silly. Okay? There's a fancy word for it, sophistry. Okay? It's sophistry to say that because when we get the person into the mess and we say we'll give you hashgacha, and now that we gave it to you, now we have to be Hafrashah and non-mukaf to save you from the aver that we gave to you. Who is you give hashgacha in the first place? Stay home. Don't give hashgacha. When the person tells you, no, we own by a year, we need Hafrashas Challah, you say, sorry, we can't help you. You know? Okay. So now we'll come back to the first teretz in a second. Okay. Let's go on the second and third teretz. Okay. Basically, the second and third teretz says you can do it, except in certain exceptions. Okay? So the question is like this. We have to think now for a second. Before we go to the truth, who are we trying to help by doing Hafrashas Challah? Okay? What are we gaining by doing Hafrashas Challah? What I mean is like this. If we didn't give hashgacha to the company in the first place, then of the people who are sitting in this room, none of us would have eaten the food anyhow. So you're not, by being mafresh challah, we're not saving any of the people in this room, because the people in this room wouldn't have eaten if we didn't give hashgacha to it. So in deciding to give hashgacha and no, we'll have to do shleim and non-mukaf, we're not saving any of the people in this room from eating the food, because we wouldn't have eaten it beforehand, and so now by making it, you're not saving me from an isser, you're just nothing. You could have just not given hashgacha, and then we wouldn't have done the isser altogether. So the people who were saving, the people who were helping, are the people, two groups of people. Either people who are not conscientious about kashrus, they keep kosher, but they don't take it so seriously. And those people might have eaten the bread even without hashgacha on it. And then we're saving people who are completely ignorant. They know zero about kashrus. They know nothing about doing mitzvahs. And those people eat it. I mean, they eat anything. They totally have no idea about kashrus. So those people would eat it, and we're saving them by taking away the not eating tevel them. So according to Tosfos' second answer, which was, beats me, what was Tosfos' second answer? Tosfos' second answer is, you can do it as long as the person hasn't done the isser yet, Okay, but it hasn't done the Isser yet. So then that's fine. For these two groups of people, they haven't done any Isser yet, and I'm saving them that tomorrow they're going to go out and buy one of these bagels and eat them as kosher. I'm saving that person from doing that so we can give hashgacha, knowing we're going to have to do this Isser cow in order to save them from a bigger Isser. So we're judging that that's worthwhile. Okay. In the third teretz, it works almost as well, not as well. The third teretz says you could do it except that the person was a pesheya. Okay, well, the middle group of people, the group of people who are not so conscientious about kashrus, they know you have to eat kosher, but they just don't take it as seriously, that person's a pesheya. That person, if he would eat the food, he's a pesheya. So that's the person who says you can't do an isser to save the person who is a pesheya. So that person who knows you have to eat kosher food, but would eat this anyhow, he said bread, what could be so bad about bread? He'll just eat it anyhow. That person, we're not allowed to do our small isser to save that person. So our only justification, according to the third teretz is, we're doing it for the people who know completely nothing about kashrus. They know zero. They're not pesher, just timid shinish, but they don't know anything. That person would have eaten the food if we didn't give hashgacha. By our giving hashgacha and going ahead and being mafresh non-mukaf, we're saving that person from doing the bigger isser. We're allowed to do that since that person's not a pesher.
That's the we have timid shinish brothers, isn't it?
We have loads of them.
No, according to many places nowadays we don't say timid shinish brothers.
Because
they're exposed to Judaism and they know all about it.
Okay, so
I'm
not sure who that is. Okay, I'm not sure who those.
Anyways, the Rav making it a goyish, right?
Yeah.
So that's a mecharoif.
I mean, they're allowed to eat it because they can be some charot, so they don't have to worry about it. But Lamaisa, that they're doing this, sir.
I know, that's fine. Again.
I go to my bread.
So you say,
bought it from some bakery.
hold on a second. I didn't think of this. Wait a second.
He said identity, you know.
Time out. So what is he saying? He's saying if that person was allowed to eat it, so I'm not saving him from an isser because he was allowed to eat it and he didn't call the parish. I don't think that's correct because he's
with the baker.
No.
That's what's good because you know the
big
baker.
mark. You just look for a logo. It's clear. It has the sun on it.
No. Well, not the kosher logo.
No, I'm talking about he's saying the person who doesn't know about kashrus will eat this food is not because of the issue of eating tevel, because he was allowed to be samech on roiv, that roiv for the bread he's going to buy in the bakery is going to be not from yid. So he's eating not tevel.
He's eating tarpas.
But on this issue, judge it one at a time. Okay, but I don't know if it's done right. But I don't know if it's right anyhow, because if Lamais is he's eating tevel, so minadin he was allowed to be samech on roiv, and I'm saving him from doing the isser that I'm getting away from his. I'm not partial. I didn't think of it before. I didn't think of it. Okay, now back to the first teretz. Back to the first teretz, which is the first teretz was. The first teretz was you can only do it to save the person if you got them into the mess. Okay? So according to what you said is, of course, in this case, you can't say, I'm going to give the hashgacha, and then say, I got you into the mess, now I have to save you. But what I say is, that first teretz also sticks in, that first teretz also sticks in, that for a mitzvah derabim, you're allowed to do an isser. Even though the first teretz says, you can only do you can only do a small avera to help somebody when you got them into the mess, but for a mitzvah derabim, he says it's also mutter. Be like 6 7. So Ken said over here, for these people who know nothing about kashrus, for whom those people, maybe it's a mitzvah the rabbin for those people to help them. Maybe according to first teretz, we can squeeze in to let it according to those people.
You created the problem. Don't give a shit in the first place.
No, we're talking about for people who know nothing. They're going to eat it anyhow. Right? They're completely ignorant about these mitzvahs. Okay. So what we're saying is at this point is, according to the second and third teretz, we can more easily say we have a justification for doing the isser to help these people. According to the first teretz, maybe. Okay, now let's move away from Hafrashas now. What's the din? Which of these tritzim taisis do we pass like? So you think, who would know who we pass like?
So is it impossible to do non-mukaf? Is that out of the question?
Essentially, it's impossible. I should say, on a practical level, in these kind of places, it's impossible.
I'm not going to say on the big.
So to do what the Gemaros said, what we said was to do what the Gemaros said is impossible. To do what some people don't like that is very hard to imagine you could pull it off. Okay? I say
it's impossible. It's more expensive.
Expensive. So could you in the room? It would have to be in the baking room. So if right. So if you want to say not, if you want to do not like the Gemara and you want to put it in the room, then and you use the matzah, not the dough. You use dough, you have to be in the freezer. You want to use matzah, you potentially could get the matzah in the room. That might work. Okay. So you say if there's such a shita, not like the Gemara, which you talked about 2 times ago, is there really someone who disagrees that if there's such a shita like that, then you could get it to be non-mukaf? Yes, that's correct. Okay. Okay.
But assuming it's impossible, what you suggested before the Saints is that if you can't do it, you can't do it, and it's maybe something to do.
Say it again. If it's
you can't do non-mukaf, you're allowed to do shloim non-mukaf.
we don't have to give hashgacha. Who asked us to take on the hashgacha?
That's a good question. Am I now in a big bread? Am I now in a big bread? I can't do non-mukaf? Or is it, don't break bread? Don't eat bread?
No, that's a different story. Someone comes to me and says to me, wait a second, a company came and said, we want to have hashgacha. And they say, but all the stuff we sell is chametz over Pesach. So we can't give hashgacha to you. So if you come and say to me, I have to do Hafrashah, I can't do Hafrashah, I have no way to do it. If you'd be next door, I would do it. If you're 100 miles away, I can't do it.
Is the Jews still willing to do Hafrashah?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so what kind of guy is that? He has to do his thing. It can't be done. If this thing kosher to eat, it's kosher to eat. So
no, it's tevel. It's tevel until you're not for Challah. It's going to be tevel.
We're allowed to tell other Jews you're allowed to eat this, and when it comes to Hilchas Challah, do Hilchas Challah. Hilchas Challah says I can't do minam mukaf. I can show minam mukaf. I'm allowed to give hashgacha to it. I'm allowed to inform other people because you're allowed to eat this and do.
Okay, I don't see that. I'm telling people that they're going to be less.
He's not going to be mafresh or whatever.
Correct.
So we're doing the best we can, and you're allowed to do l'chadchila. You're allowed to do l'chadchila shloim and right?
No, for the Emet.
I'm saying in this case, there's nothing else better to do. You're allowed to do shloim and right?
You see, he could do shloim and mukaf. If he came to the Rav and said, Rav, what should I do? I would say, yeah, you're in a case, you should do it. So that's what you're saying. So you're saying is, we'll take the place of the owner. If the owner showed up at the Rav and said to him, listen, Rabbi, I can't be mafresh challah in my factory. What should I do? He would take them to do it for the Emet, shloim and mukaf. Call Shasaka could be ever done.
Even if he wanted, even if the Rav would tell him, you need to know you have to do minam mukaf. It doesn't matter, but for us, he's not going to do minam mukaf. Us Jews, are trying to keep the law away. This is what we're allowed to do.
So you're saying, under the circumstances, the choice is either there should be no Hafrashas challah or Hafrashas challah shloim and mukaf. If you had to make that judgment, which would be better, forget about that me doing it. In judgment, that it's better to do shloim and mukaf than nothing. So in Cain, so what I'm doing is I'm upgrading things to what would be the right answer. If you go to the Rav and ask him, what should we do? Should we do shloim and mukaf or nothing at all? He would say, do shloim and mukaf. Okay, but that's only true. That's only true if there's someone to save. Let's say you were taking this stuff and you were going to throw it in the garbage anyhow. You're going to feed it to Goyim. What do you say? Do shloim and mukaf?
I have a friend that has a bakery. He's a Jewish person. I go to the Rav sector. Should I go do this? Should I do this? Should I do nothing or should I do shloim and mukaf? Let's do shloim and mukaf. I'm doing a year later. I'm doing this for a year.
No. Let's say he has a Treif bakery. And he said to him, should I be mafresh challah for him? No, a Treif bakery. Let's say it's a Treif bakery. And he says to him, should I be mafresh challah for him, shloim and mukaf, to save people from eating the isser of...
Save him, I'll be mafresh challah.
From save him. Should I do that? Should I be mafresh challah for him?
So what's not? It's Treif.
Who am I helping? Yes. He puts...
It's not chayv Hafrashas challah.
Why not? Oh, because it's not royal achil? Okay, you catch me, okay.
The point is, it's not a shkacha, then he's Lord, it's not authority.
Okay, that's not the case. Let's do one kosher baker. Okay, the food is kosher. Right?
Okay.
But it's not even shkacha.
But it's not shkacha.
So you're
not shkacha. I'm going to forget shkacha. I'm going to my Rav and say, should I do to help this guy that don't shloim and mukaf, or should I do nothing? What's the answer?
Nothing.
No, so he says is...
Whose line is that? It's only volume.
He's supposed to be mafresh challah.
No. So the question, whether I should do it for him, that's what we're talking about, be choyte for him. Your question, would he himself, if he showed up at the Rav and said, Rabbi, should I do it myself, or should I not be mafresh shloim and mukaf, or not be mafresh at all? So you're saying, what would the Rav answer? The Rav would say to him, be mafresh shloim and mukaf.
Who's buying it?
No. He would say, you have a mitzvah Hafrashas challah.
So he's selling it to the guy? What's he giving it to the guy?
Yeah, you have a mitzvah Hafrashas challah.
Mom, is he giving it to the guy?
I think so.
That's true.
It's I make the dough. I have, it's not Isa Vaca, it's Isa that I'm making. He's going to buy it. So I said, I'm making the batter. I'm going to sell it to people. So if he came to the Rav, we would say to him, be mafresh challah shloim and mukaf. That's what you should do. Under the circumstances, that's what you should do. So now I'm just taking his place. That's what you're saying. So he would have been answered. We would answer the child. Be mafresh shloim and mukaf.
Don't get involved. Why should he get involved?
Why? But he's saying the person himself could have done it. The person himself would have done it.
Yeah,
okay. It's a point.
No, and then forget this. And then, now, am I allowed to? Is Jews allowed to eat this?
Yeah. That part I got. I understand. The shadow is just, how do I do the thing that's not lechatchila? You're saying is, well, under the circumstances, it is a lechatchila. The Rav would have told him to do it, so then I can do it for him. What's the difference? I'm just doing the same shit.
How could the Rav would have told him that he should do it? Why wouldn't the Rav tell him, do minam mukaf?
Well, it may not be realistic. He says, my factory, I own a factory, it's 100 miles from my house. I have no way to do minam mukaf. I never show up there, come in once a month. So what would the Rav say to him? So under the circumstances, Shas Abchak, so do it with a B'diavad. Okay, that's an interesting answer. Okay, I accept. Okay, let me finish what I have to say here. No, well, it negates the din. So what do we pass in these three shittas? So the Beis brings a Chuvas Rashba about this. Okay, and the Chuvas Rashba was a halacha l'maisa case, and it's brought in Shulchan this din. Okay, there was to them that was they said it was a practical case. There was a lady who was going to be kidnapped, and they were going to shmad this lady, and the family wanted to go ahead on Shabbos to go out of the tchum to save her from these kidnappers, so she shouldn't be she shouldn't become a mishabedes. So they asked the Rashi what they should do. So the Rashi says, well, Taisa says, I don't know if he quotes Taisa. He says the answer to this theory is it depends if you got the person into the mess. The family didn't get him into this mess, so you're not allowed to do it. You can't go save her. You're only allowed to go do an aver to save somebody else if you got the person into the mess. You didn't. These people walked in off the street and kidnapped her. So you're not allowed to do an aver to save the person. You're not allowed to be over on the Tchum Shabbos in order to save the lady from becoming mishumedes for her life, which to us sounds like amazing. Like because you were in the dream of the question, the Rashi said, no, you can't do it. They said, no, I'm not sure. They say like this. He says, look, first of all, Tosfos, that same teretz of Tosfos says that if it's a mitzvah rabbah, you're allowed to do it. He says, come on, it's a mitzvah rabbah. The lady, Amli Mechal Shabbos at Tchum one day, and she's going to become a Shar mitzvah for her whole life. That sounds like a mitzvah rabbah to me. He says that the ikkur is like the lady towards some Tosfos that usually you are allowed to, except in certain cases. So, for example, the third teretz of Tosfos says you're allowed to do it unless the person was a pasher, so she's not a pasher. They kidnapped her. Therefore, you're allowed to do it. Okay, so the Shulchan brings like this, the way he passes, not like the Rashba. It could be even listed the Raisa to save the lady. Okay, we don't have time, but there are certain cases when you can't. We're skipping that. Okay, you could do that. So Mishabur says. Okay, well, so we're not passing like the first teretz of Tosfos. The first teretz of Tosfos said you only have to do it if you got the person to this. That's not true. We don't pass like that. We pass like the second or the third teretz. What? Mitzvah derabim is sort of like an extension of the first teretz. We sort of hold like that. We sort of accept that. Okay, but I'm saying this that says that you're only going to save the person if you got them into the mess. We don't accept that. Of the second and the third teretz, the Mishnah says the ikar is like the third teretz. The ikar is the third teretz. The third teretz.
Straight to first teretz.
What?
It's exactly like the first teretz.
Which is?
With the exception of mitzvah derabim.
No, the answer to the stira is not, it depends if it's a mitzvah derabim or not. The answer to the stira is it depends if it's a pasher. The reason why we did some passes also is because it's a pasher. Yeah.
The exception of mitzvah.
With an extra exception of mitzvah derabim. Okay, so
that's the first step.
So let me finish what I'm saying. I'll finish what I'm saying. You'll see that Bishmur says, now you could have said that. He does not like that. He says is that the person with the din is that only you can do it unless the person is a pasher. He says, and therefore you could save this lady. You can go out. The family or anybody else could save the lady, except she was a pasher. If this lady did things that led to her being taken by these people, I guess, he doesn't say, well, she was so friends with them and she was already having inclinations to go with them to the point that they came in the chapter. Okay, so she was a pasher. If she was a pasher, you're not allowed to do it. Okay? Then he says you're not allowed to, even though the mitzvah, the Rabban part of it would still be true. There's still a mitzvah of mitzvah, in that time, mitzvah dir Rabban. It's a mitzvah gedolah. It's a mitzvah Rabban. Those are very similar. The Mishnah says, no, if she was a pasher, you're not allowed to do that. He says you're allowed to do Issa D'Rabbanan for that. In that case, you can do Issa D'Rabbanan. You can't do Issa D'Rabbanan. Okay.
Maybe machmer for the second teretz.
Machmer for the second teretz? It'd be machmer for the third teretz. Pasher.
Maybe he holds, but the first teretz is machmer for that sheet.
Well, machmer, but in this case, not machmer. The lady's on her own, you know. So okay. So let me just end off with you just some interesting cases. We're not going to talk about them. Just interesting cases. Other cases of this chatebu shishis Xavier, just for the interest of it. Okay. Somebody calls up Challah, and they send some people out to go to answer the call. And then when the guys are on their way ready, they realize that they don't need anybody anymore. The person got better. Whatever happened, they realize that there's no need for these people anymore. So the shaila is, should the dispatcher call the guys back and say, come back home? Because otherwise they're going to keep on driving. They're going to drive for another 3 minutes to get to the person's house. They're going to realize they're not needed. They're going to drive home. So they could save the people from being B'chal Shabbos by telling them, come back. So you can just get on the radio and say, guys, okay, I don't need you guys anymore, come home. And I'll save them, okay? So we would think that all the answer to Tosfos should agree that in this case it's mutter. I got the guy into this. The dispatcher is the one who he called them, okay? And the people are not pasheim, and the people in the area. You think all the truths would be masking? You would think. They asked the shayla to Rav Foster, and Rav says, no, of course you can't do it. Let the guys go. Okay? It's a very short tshuva. He doesn't, in fact, yeah, of course you shouldn't do it. Yeah, he says very briefly. He says why. He says first of all, he says I don't know what to do. Maybe it's an issa derisa to call him on the radio. I don't know what he's talking about. I don't know what that's supposed to mean. And he says and any other drivers are not going to have any issue anyhow because you want to say someone. So it's very cryptic. So it's very hard to understand. We would have guessed that in that case, all the Chutz of Taisus would agree that you should call the feedback.
So you're going to what you think is sakana.
The what?
If you're going to what you think is a sakana Shabbos, it's just not true.
Right.
It's not a sakana. It's a mistake. You're going to the wrong person, wrong guy. I don't know. Okay?
Right.
Is that, are you doing...
So that's what
is it chuya? Is it chuya? Because you think...
I understand. So, and then he brings... the whole thing is...
He's holding it back.
The whole thing, no, he says, Harachti Makam Acher, about why this is... Okay. But he has as much as like 2 lines over here. It's like his real thing.
What he's saying, it sounds like he's saying that's
one part. Okay, this another quick case is Rabbi Zilberstein talks about I run a nursing home. I think this case was a nursing home. I run some kind of a facility, and I realized that they left the light on the refrigerator. Okay, so the people who are there don't care. They're going to open the door anyhow. They can see the lights on. They don't care. They're going to keep opening the refrigerator door anyhow. They want their food. Okay, so the child says, can I pull out the bulb with the shinui? I'll do as an Issa Drabanan, get the bulb out with the shinui to stop all these people from doing the Issa the rest of the day.
I can open the door.
Yeah. So the next guy opens the door and says, oh my gosh, Rabbi, you see...
Turning it off.
I'm going to turn off the bulb with the shinui. I'm going to do this. It's open, and I'm going to, oh my gosh, the door's open. I'm going to figure out a way to...
I can get some bulbs out without a shinui.
Okay. And the other case was a guy's house alarm. The other case was a guy's house alarm went off. His house alarm went off, and he knows that his not-from neighbors are going to call the police to turn the noise off. It's ringing like crazy. Okay, they can't handle the noise. They're going to call the police. So they're Tishol. Yidden are going to show up. They're going to call the police, and the Yidden are going to drive over here and turn my alarm off. So should I turn the alarm off now to save all this Chilul Shabbos from happening? Okay. Another case. A few years ago, you may remember, I don't know, maybe like 2 years ago, there was a child missing on Shabbos. And people were going around trying to find the kid. Some kid walked to shul and they never made it. Okay, people were walking around trying hard. I don't remember at that time if they told people to Issa D'Oraisa. It could be they just had goyim driving around. I don't remember. Okay, so the question was, this is a question that came up in Eretz Yisrael, was there where the people doing the Isurim were getting, and they found the kid, which is what happened there also. An hour later, they found the kid. So the child, should you call all those other people who are still driving around looking for this kid to tell them, to stop them from doing Issa D'Oraisa, you do the Issa D'Rabbanan L'chayra of calling all these people and saying to them, guys, it's okay, stop looking for her because we found her. Okay? And the last is, I'll get to what the dinner thing are, but the last is, this is what I'll tell you, the last one is, if the Erev in town goes down on Shabbos, so it's well brought out that you can ask a guy to do it. In Shmir Shabbos, he says, but a Yid, a guy to fix the Erev to stop people from being Machal Shabbos. But he says you should not have a Yid do it. Okay, you should not. You're not doing this at D'Oraisa. He has cases, ways for you to do it that it won't be this D'Oraisa. But if it comes to the point that a Yid will have to do this D'Oraisa, he says you shouldn't do it. Over there, he doesn't explain very much. It could be over there. There are other factors in Hilchos Shabbos. The people who are carrying are being misasik anyhow. It could be part of the cheshbon here is they're not doing something so terrible if the Erev was down. Kenzai. Okay, but it's just another case.